It's sort of insane that I have never talked about Felidae on this channel. Films for adults featuring anthropomorphic animals are a very rare thing indeed, and it's no wonder why. Kids love to see talking animals. Of course, a major part of that is really because it's what the adults decide to market towards children. But at the same time, I think that the average adult will have a much easier time relating to a human character than they will to animals. Adults are far less likely to suspend their disbelief. It's why so many of us are incredibly dull, and why we've got so many nitpicky film channels on YouTube. That, however, is not true of every adult. Contrary to popular belief, a lot of us love seeing talking animals on screen and will still watch movies featuring them, even if kids are considered their primary demographic. Yet every once in a while, an animated film of this variety will be made with the intention of entertaining an older audience. The most obvious examples being Watership Down and The Plague Dogs, both films adapted from Richard Adams' books. There's also Isle of Dogs, Animal Farm, and even Fritz the Cat.
I think I saw you in a movie once.
Hey, try not to interrupt, huh?
But one animated film that often gets overlooked, and I believe to be pretty deserving of praise, at least in the animation department, is Michael Schacht's Felidae. But what is Felidae?
Do you know the meaning of this word? Felidae?
Could it be a scientific name for all our family divisions? Cats, as they're usually called?
Felidae.
Adapted from the 1989 novel of the same name and written by German-Turkish author Akif Pirinci, Felidae is a piece of crime fiction that tells the story of Francis, an ordinary house cat who takes up the role of detective as a string of grisly cat murders start occurring within his new neighborhood. The film is very much just that, a noir detective story featuring cats. What makes it unique is how it aims to portray their motivations and mannerisms as realistically as possible. It feels like the intent was to get into the mind of a cat while still telling a compelling narrative. Because of this, it doesn't shy away from elements that any other talking animal cartoon would surely avoid, but more on that in a bit. Many characters in Felidae are portrayed in a more mean-spirited light. Often these characters are driven out of gluttony or lust. It closely resembles the way that cats probably do think. Not to mention, some of the insults these cats throw at one another can be downright cruel.
As I trotted along behind this mutilated Quasimodo, I wondered who or what he'd fallen victim to.
So as I mentioned before, this film is actually based on a book that I happen to have right here. This is not my copy, this is my sister's copy, and on top of that, I have not even read this book. I am a fraud. But I just wanted to address the author of this book, who is now a quite controversial figure, at least in Germany where he has any sort of relevance. This is mainly due to his association with a lot of far-right parties and movements. He's also said some pretty horrible things. Yeah, that guy. But something weirdly ironic about all of this is that Felidae seems like a story that's very much against eugenics. So unless I interpreted it all wrong, I don't know where all this was coming from. So because of these many controversies revolving around the writer, this book has been pretty heavily censored and banned throughout the world. Now, I am very much against the banning of books, especially when the book has little to nothing to do with the writer's political beliefs. Like, I may hate world-renowned transphobe J.K. Rowling, but I still think that kids should probably be allowed to read Harry Potter. If you're a parent, you get to decide what's best. I would say you could be open to discussing that J.K. Rowling's a bigot. I'm personally all for that, but in the end, it's for you as the parent to decide. But yeah, I just wanted to point this out to acknowledge that the author is in fact a huge douchebag, but I'm just here to talk about the movie. A movie which he also happened to write. Anyway, I don't condone any of his beliefs. Call me Pontius Pilate, because right now I'm washing my hands of this. Plus, above all, I kind of just wanted to show off this neat book. Back to the movie. While quite a few of the films I mentioned earlier, such as Watership Down and Isle of Dogs, are films that can be enjoyed by both children and adults, this is not at all the case with Felidae. Felidae is strictly an adult film, featuring references to sex, balls, specifically castration, pissing, which I guess could be in a kid's film, but it's more so the fact that they use the word piss. There's even some heavily implied homosexuality. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
But it's more so the nature of the flirting that makes it feel unwarranted. It's also just something that you didn't see in a lot of older animated films. Granted, Germany did become a pretty progressive country after, well, so perhaps I'm just overanalyzing things here. And while I did mention the inclusion of the occasional sexual reference, I failed to mention that the film also features some pretty explicit cat sex. You heard me. This is what everyone decides to focus on whenever they discuss this movie. You look up Felidae on Google Images and you're sure to be greeted with tons of screenshots of Francis banging his lady friend. And it's not that we haven't seen cat sex in other films. There's a pretty blatant depiction of this in Fritz the Cat, but Felidae's depictions are of more feral nature, and they're gonna show you as much as they can. This is a film for adults, god damn it. It's fascinating in a way because Felidae is striving for such realism in the way that cats act and move, but then they're all drawn like characters out of a Don Bluth film, which makes it feel like furry bait. Granted, I don't think that was something to worry about in the time period that this was made. Anyway, did I mention how horrifically violent this film is? Because I think I undersold that aspect. This is up there with the most violent animated films ever made. It does not hold back. We're talking decapitations, puppeteered cat corpses, guts being spilled. It really is a surreal nightmare of a movie. But the most difficult bits of violence to sit through are the animal testing scenes, which really hit too close to reality, and frankly, I felt they went a bit too far. And I say that as someone who often loves violent media. Thankfully, that's only a small portion of the film. There were still plenty of brutal moments that had me going, hell yeah. Oh, here we go. Oh. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh.
The horror.
Honestly, I don't know how much of this movie I'm allowed to show on YouTube. This is a beautifully animated film. If there's any reason to watch it, it's the terrific animation, mainly executed by TFC Trick Company, an animation company based in Hamburg. Everything is so fluent and feels like it was assembled with careful examination of the mannerisms of cats. The film was also outsourced to several other animation companies, and you know what? I'm gonna list them all so I don't have to feel guilty for leaving them out. They were Animation Studio Ludwig, Uli Meyer, Dagda Film Limited, Obvious, Azadart, Natterjack, Mediasoft, Premiere Films, A-Film APS, and the Han Shin Corporation. The characters were designed by Paul Bolger, and I adore the work they did here. As I mentioned earlier, it has strong Don Bluth vibes, even down to some of the cats not looking anything like a cat.
They're a duo, a pair of lonely ones who were meant to be a two.
I mean, take this guy for example. I mean, what were they feeding this thing? Presumably the same stuff they fed Garfield's dad. Fun fact that I just learned, Paul Bolger actually worked as an animator on several Don Bluth films, which would explain a lot. Though it may come as a surprise, Felidae is actually, till this day, still the most expensive animated film made in Germany. Adjusted for US dollars, this film cost about $5 million to make, which honestly isn't a whole lot.
$1 million isn't exactly a lot of money these days.
If you compare it to Don Bluth's Thumbelina, which was released the same year, that film cost a total of 28 million USD, and no one remembers it.
Thumbelina's gone.
Who did it? A toad?
So the fact that Felidae was able to pull off what it did with what little budget is pretty commendable. I'm sure absolutely no one was overworked, he says sarcastically. Of course, this film was a box office bomb due to poor marketing. No surprises there.
Mit katzenartiger Geschwindigkeit eroberte ein Buch die Bestsellerlisten und begeistert und bewegt seit Jahren die Herzen der Leser. Felidae.
but with a big swing like this, I think it's easy to understand why it failed. Speaking of some strange decisions made by this movie, I forgot to mention that Felidae also opens and closes with an original song that shares the movie's title.
A superior cat, proud and divine, Felidae, Felidae.
Sung by none other than my boy, Boy George of Culture Club fame. It's honestly a really beautiful song, and the fact that it solely exists for a horrific movie like this is absolute insanity. And I've given this movie plenty of praise, but now I feel it's time to address some of the more negative aspects of it, because this movie is far from perfect. As you can see from the clips I've used, I watched the English dub, which varies in quality. I like the voices a lot. They're all very fitting, but I'm not sure as to the accuracy of the translation. My biggest failing in this review so far is that I failed to talk much about the plot beyond a brief description, and there's a very good reason for that. One of my biggest issues with this movie is that the plot is deeply confusing. I can tell you bits and pieces. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff in this film, including a cat cult that performs cat suicides as ritual, clues laid out by a nightmare version of Gregor Mendel, father of genetics, and a villainous cat who aims to create the perfect breed of feline as a means to wipe out mankind. But even then, I know I'm leaving out a lot of important details, as all this stuff thrown together is just too much to take in. Felidae never slows down to let the viewers process what they've heard. There's no room to breathe. As you try to catch up, they've already moved on to the next twist in the mystery. It's like when a teacher is explaining the steps to solving a math equation and you miss a step and they just keep talking and you're the only kid in the class who gets left behind.
The obvious thing that ties the two stiffs I've seen together is sex.
Evolution has
The
created an
killer has to
astounding
be a sex
number of
machine
various
himself who
creatures.
doesn't like
Not
competition
one,
from
however,
others and
deserves the
decided to wipe
respect
them
and wonder that
Solution
you
to the
discovered.
riddle is actually
Wow,
very
where do you
simple.
compile that?
It's in the word
Those of us who were
Felidae.
Evolution has created an astounding number of
I'm not sure if it's a problem with translation and if the German dub is easier to follow. My sister tells me that this is the case, and I choose to believe her. This is a big detriment to the overall quality of the film, as it gives it this strange sense of pacing. That's actually another element of it that reminds me of Don Bluth. I mean, his movies always had this pacing that just felt off.
I'm surrounded by morons.
This is especially the case with the film's ending, which feels rushed and I think more vague than probably intended. Maybe they were running out of time and money, who knows.
So, my friends, we sit on the edge of our seats while murderers commit their atrocities and then are beaten.
Either way, Felidae, the film, never got a sequel, although there was a sequel book, Felidae on the Road. Truly, the Runaway Ralph of talking cat books.
I'm running away.
Huh? What?
I'm running away on my motorcycle.
Just an additional note here, the footage I use for this video is actually from the recent Deaf Crocodile HD remaster of the film. The Deaf Crocodile copy only includes the English sub, not dub, but when I received it, I had already watched the film dubbed. The dub was only ever included on the German and French DVD release, and a low-quality, slightly edited version of it can currently be found on YouTube.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
So what I did is I ended up splicing the two together for the sake of this video. What I thought would be a simple process ended up being way more convoluted than I anticipated. So yes, there is a beautiful new HD remaster of this film that you can order online right now, but the English dub is not included, which honestly might be for the best. I actually went back and watched some of the English subbed German version after writing this script, and from what little I've seen, it might genuinely improve the film. There's certainly small bits of dialogue that the English version seemed to have missed, or perhaps it was just a poor translation, I can't really say for sure. Now I'm no linguist, but from what I heard, the German just sounded more natural, but I still think that the dub is worth a watch if you can't afford the 4K Blu-ray. It's pretty decent for what it is. If you can stomach some more gruesome content, and the cat sex, then I think there's a good chance you may enjoy Felidae. I suppose the point of this review was to make everyone more aware of a horrific and incredibly unique underseen film. It's not without its fair share of flaws, the pacing and story could be better, but I think it's worth watching just for the strange oddity of it all. It's certainly a very nice looking film, and the strangeness of it is enough to make me recommend it. Thank you all for giving this video the time of day. I hope to be back soon with some more animation reviews. I'll see you then. Goodbye.